Okay, the 2012 elections are over, and a few things are clear. Christians are divided, and Christians are clueless about where we are in the prophetic events leading up to the return of Christ in glory. Aren't we? Isn't that true? And this is dangerous. This is Satan's advantage. Division, gridlock, and lack of understanding plays right into Satan's advantage. So what's the plan? And what difference does it make? The election is over. And what can we as Christians do now? This, is the direction we are going really that bad? Let's turn that last question around. Wouldn't you love to be going a better direction? Here's the mission of Keep USA Great. Draw closer to Christ. Learn about Christ. Learn about the prophetic events leading up to the return of Christ in glory. Prepare. Support the Constitution of Liberty. Support a strong economy. Encourage others to do the same. And especially encourage politicians to do the same. And support and elect candidates that do the same. And support businesses which support this mission. Now let me ask you, anything about that you don't like? Doesn't that sound all warm and fuzzy? Now let me ask you this here. Where are we in the prophetic events? Christians, this is one of the biggest problems of our time. Here we are living in this great historic time leading up to the second coming of Christ, and we are clueless about where we are leading up to the second coming of Christ. I mean, I go out and I do videos asking people, where are we in the prophetic events? And you ask them that, and their eyes, they just glaze right over. I mean, they're lost. They're gone. And rightfully so. I mean, no one has really had a good clue on where we are. I mean, think of all the times that people are saying, Christ is coming back, Christ is coming back. And time again, they've been proven wrong. I had a friend that, more of acquaintance, Baptist scholar. A great guy. I told him I was writing a book about the prophetic events leading up to the second coming of Christ. Asked him to take a look at it, and he respectfully said, no, thank you. That topic just was not one of his favorites. And he said, in essence, Lowell, you've joined a great club. And I go, what club is that? And he says, the club in which everyone has been proven wrong. And you think about that. Time and time again, people have wrote books about the prophetic events leading up to the second coming of Christ, and time again, they've been proven wrong. And so it's kind of like the boy that cries wolf, and we all know that story. You keep on doing that, and pretty soon no one's listening. And isn't that the problem in what's going on in our society today? Is that a lot of people are tuning God out. And Christians are just clueless about where we are in the prophetic events leading up to the return of Christ in glory. Here, this magnificent event is coming, and we don't know where we are. We have dozens upon dozens of chapters in the Bible talking about the return of Christ and these events leading up to that time. And yet we are clueless of where we are in those prophetic events. Well, if we knew where we were in the prophetic events, we wouldn't be nearly as divided. We would be more laser focused. We would have more meaning and more passion in the direction we want our country to go. And so that would just be awesome. But does it mean that we would all have to join the same church and be one denomination? No, it doesn't mean that at all. There's over 33,000 different Christian denominations around the world. We're not going to come into the unity of the doctrine anytime soon. However, there is a way that we can understand where we are in the prophetic events. I know where we are in the prophetic events. And I know that some of you are going, oh, okay, there's another person that's going to be wrong. Well, here's what I've discovered. I discovered some things that have thrown us off for centuries, and why people long ago thought that Christ would be coming back in their lifetime, and it never happened. And so let me share with you a couple of things that I found. Daniel chapter 2, Daniel he learned about the interpretation of what King Nebuchadnezzar saw about this image, and so he told the king about that image, and then years later, Daniel had a vision, and an angel gave Daniel the interpretation of what that vision was. And then years after that, Daniel had another vision. And again, angels told him what the interpretation of that vision was. Now, what has thrown us off, one of the things that have thrown us off is that scholars had taken the interpretation of what the Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 2, in the experience that he had back in that, talking about that image, and scholars have tried to take that interpretation of that experience and to blend it in with the experience that Daniel had years ago after that, and in Daniel chapter 7, and also later years after that that we read about in Daniel chapter 8. So realistically, think about this. If you or I were to have an experience, and years later we had another experience, and years after that we had another experience, but in all three of those experiences, we were given what the interpretation was for those unique experiences. But then we started to mix up those interpretations of those experiences. Could that contaminate the other experiences? It could. And that's what happened, is that the scholars looked at Daniel chapter 7 and 8 and found that, well, they could kind of make it kind of fit with what Daniel saw that we read about in Daniel chapter 2 if they just switch a couple of words over in Daniel chapter 7 and 8. And those words are king and kings. Now I want you to think about that. What they changed it to, and they didn't change it in the Bible until just recently, over the past few decades. But all through, and when you go back and you look at the Hebrew word was king or kings. But what they changed it to was kingdom and kingdoms. Now, what's the difference between a king and a kingdom? Well, you take a look. In the life of a kingdom, the lifetime of a kingdom, let's say a kingdom is around for 200 years, how many kings can there be? There could be dozens and dozens and dozens of kings. And yet, a king only has his one life. So can you see the contamination there? It's something that has just thrown us off. Now, the scholars have tried to make it fit by using king, and it kind of works for a while, it seems like, but then as they go along, they go, well, it doesn't quite fit over here, but oh well, something like that. The bottom line is that what I found is that, let me start with this. When we read in the book of Revelation that John saw a succession of 8 kings leading up to the second coming of Christ. Now these are 8 kings, not kingdoms, 8 kings. And so when we take a look at what John saw with these succession of 8 kings, then ask ourselves, the scriptures say that out of the mouth of 2 or more witnesses will all truth be established. Okay, so John saw a succession of 8 kings. What other prophet saw the same succession of 8 kings? And here's the answer. I found that in Daniel chapter 11, it talks about a lot of kings, But when you break down the genealogy of those kings there, and you find that there is a succession of 8 kings leading up to the second coming of Christ. And that is the second prophet. Now, doesn't it make sense that there's going to be those 2 prophets that are going to be testifying about the same succession of 8 kings? And Daniel is that other king. In addition to that, Daniel tells us which country the kings are from. And Daniel tells us what the 4th king does, and the 5th king, and the 6th king, the 7th, and the 8th. And so now, as we take a look at that country that Daniel says that the kings are from, which is Persia, which today is now Iran, and when we take a look at the king that is ruling over there now, which is Ayatollah Khomeini, and when we look at what he's doing now, what he has done, and what his predecessors have done, and you compare that to what Daniel said that the kings are going to be doing, you just look around and all of a sudden you get a match. You get a dead-on match. We now know which of the 8 kings is alive and ruling today. Now, since there's a succession of 8 kings leading up to the second coming of Christ, would you like to take a guess on which king is ruling today? Which one do you think that it is? Now, mind you, that the 8th king is the king that gets the power, seat, and authority of Satan and goes to fight against Christ when Christ comes back. So do you think we're on the 8th king or the 7th king? Which king do you think that we're on? Well, absolutely, positively, we are right now on the tail end of the 4th king. Ayatollah Khomeini is the 4th king. And because of what Daniel has told us, we now know what Khomeini is going to do next, which I think he's already starting to do. We know how he's going to die. We know what's going to happen to Iran after he dies. And we know a lot more information, a ton of information. In fact, it turns out that Daniel chapter 11 is the foundational chapter out of all the chapters of the Bible for understanding the chronological order of prophetic events leading up to the second coming of Christ. And, you know, here's the thing, is that we know that the book of Revelation, it is not in chronological order. But Daniel chapter 11 is. And now it's evident that Daniel chapter 11 starts to be fulfilled around 1925, 1935, and it ends with the second coming of Christ. And the significance of that chapter is that there is a lot of information in that chapter. And over that time that it expands out, that it covers, there is always a prophetic person and or prophetic event all the way through it without no major gaps. No major gaps. So once we understand Daniel chapter 11 and we identify where we are in that chapter, then we know that's where we're at, and we will always know the prophetic person and or event coming up in chronological order. Now, it doesn't give us all the prophetic events. There's many more prophetic events that are mentioned in different portions of the Bible. But we use Daniel chapter 11 as a foundation because no other chapter out of all the Bible covers such an expanded amount of time with as much information. regarding the second coming of Christ. And so now with Daniel chapter 11 as the foundation, we can add on Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 7. We can then assemble the book of Revelation in chronological order, and we learn more about what events happen with which king. Now, that is exciting news, because we can now know where we are in the prophetic events. And this is the final lap leading up to the return of Christ. That Daniel chapter 11 gives us the final lap. It gives us everything. Okay, these are the landmarks that we're going to be looking for. We're able to pile on more landmarks within that chapter. It's exciting. So you owe it to yourself to check it out. Please don't rely on others to do what you ought to do. This is too important. This needs to be between you and God. You need to study it out and pray about it. There are many scholarly people that want to hold on to the errors. I know one scholarly person who still believes that Christ is coming back in 2016. Well, you know what? By 2016, we're going to see that John and Daniel's perfect track record has grown well over 20 for 20, and that Christ will not have returned in glory. Now, where is John and Daniel's track record right now? It's about 16 for 16 in prophetic points fulfilled. And over the next few years, I expect that to expand to about 29 for 29. Now that's amazing. Now we have a long ways before Christ comes back. We are at the tail end of the fourth king. But does that mean that, well, we don't have anything to worry about? No, just the opposite. We got a whole plethora list of prophetic events that are going to happen. And God has given us those scriptures so that we can learn about those prophetic events. Well, since they're prophetic events, aren't they going to happen? And therefore, there's nothing we can do about it. Therefore, why bother learning about them? No, just the opposite. Heavenly Father gave us these prophetic events so we could learn about them, and so that we who believe in Christ, we who are Christians, valiant Christians, can learn about them, and we can prepare for them so we can avoid unnecessary life experiences. And wouldn't that be great? Now I want to talk to you about why it's so important here for us here in the United States. Here in the United States, we have a lot of Christians, but we have a lot of Christians that we can all do a lot better. But there's a lot of Christians out there that have put the Bible up on the shelf and it's collecting dust. And you know what? Let's just say that we can all do better drawing closer to Christ. We can all do better about learning more about Him. And here's why we need to do it. Is that because we were able to learn about the succession of 8 kings leading up to the second coming of Christ, it also comes apparently very clear that the 6th king is in power during the time that the evil single world monetary system is set up. That's that mark of the beast that we talk about, the 666, the one that you're going to have in your hand or your forehead. Well, those who accept the mark of the beast. But for us as Christians, we are not going to accept the mark of the beast. We who are valiant are going to say, no way. And this is important for us here in the United States, because we have the opportunity now, which is very end of the 4th king, up to sometime during the reign of the 6th king, to prepare the United States to not accept the mark of the beast system. Now, how are we going to do that? We got to educate ourselves and where we are in the prophetic events. We got to gain that witness of where we are in the prophetic events. And then we have to encourage politicians to learn about where we are in the prophetic events as well. And when elections come, we need to elect strong Christian candidates who promise, and we can trust, that they will not accept the mark of the beast system for the United States. Now, doesn't that make sense? Now, do we have a mission? Yes, we do. Does the 2000 election, it's over, so does that mean there's nothing for us to do? No, just the opposite. Now is the time for Christians to understand where we are in the prophetic events. We need to share that information with our other Christian and anyone that will listen. And we need to be able to get our nation, and really I think that this needs to be a worldwide draw closer to Christ revival. And but here in the United States, our mission is to get this information out and to get the politicians to understand where we're at and to help them to shape up the laws of our country that support making a great country, a country that we'll be more proud of to turn over to Christ when Christ returns in glory. We don't want to turn over just a horrible country to Christ. We want to turn over a country, a kingdom, a constitution that we said, you know what, we've been trying to live Christ-like. And we've been trying to keep your commandments. And we've been trying to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so we want to turn over something better than what we have right now. And we can do that. And so with the politicians, we got to understand where we're at. We got to be able to share this information, encourage politicians to check it out for themselves. And hopefully with this information, now we'll be able to stop the gridlock. We'll start to be able to move in a much, much better direction. And here's why it's important to do. When that mark of the beast comes, our country is not going to accept it. The United States is going to say, no way, we're a Christian nation, we're not going to do it. We're one nation under God, and our God is Christ. And then I want you to think about all the rest of, let's say that the vast majority of nations around the world, well, they're going to accept the mark of the beast system. And then what's going to happen? Well, what happens at that point there is that they're going to refuse to do business with us. They're not going to sell anything to us. They're not going to buy anything from us. And so now we're becoming this isolated country. And our energy is going to depend on us. Our food is going to depend on us. Our economy is going to depend on us. And so this is an opportunity that we have now, and to that time when the mark of the beast comes, that we can prepare to become energy self-sufficient, food self-sufficient, and economically self-sufficient. And now, doesn't that just ring true to you? Now, another thing we got to think about: what about the Christians in all around the world? Their nations are going to accept the mark of the beast system probably. And when those nations accept the mark of the beast system, then those Christians, the valiant ones, are going to say, no, no can do, not going to do it, not going to take the mark of the beast. And John said that he saw many that were beheaded because they did not accept the mark of the beast system. And so what are we going to do? We're going to open up our doors to the Christians and say, come here. This is going to be your place of refuge. And so a lot of them are going to be coming with clothes on their back and maybe a suitcase or something, but they're not going to be coming with the U-Haul trucks probably. And so we as Christians are going to have to prepare for the day where we're going to be really helping out our Christian brothers and sisters. Now, what about those in the country, in the United States, that they don't like Christ? They're against Christ. Well, that's a natural process there, because we elect strong Christian candidates who don't accept the mark of the beast system, then those people who want to accept the mark of the beast system are going to have to go where they can exercise the mark of the beast. We're not going to be able to buy or sell to them because we don't have the mark of the beast system here. And doesn't that make sense? And so does that mean we hate them, or we're going to be rude to them? No, we just love God more. And because of our love for God, we're going to be Christian, we're going to be loving, we're going to be caring, we're going to be taking care of people, but we're not going to accept that mark of the beast system. Now, again, this is new information, and this is really going against a lot of the grain of what has been taught out there. And so many pastors and ministers are just, it's going against everything they've been teaching. And some are going to be really stubborn about this information. But you know what? What you need to do is you need to take responsibility for yourself. You need to take a look at the information for yourself, and you need to look to see if it makes sense to you. You need to pray about it to see if you get that witness that yes, it is true. I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, you know it. For centuries, people have thought Christ is coming back, Christ is coming back, Christ is coming back, and they've been wrong and wrong and wrong. And now we're going to be taking a look, and we're going to be understanding where we are in the prophetic events, and we're going to be understanding in general when Christ is going to come back. We might not know the day or the hour, but we have a ton of information. We got so much information about the events leading up to the second coming of Christ. And right now, we don't, you go around and ask Christians, and they're clueless on where we are in those prophetic events. You ask, when is Christ going to come back? Oh, he's coming back in 5 years. Oh, he's coming back in 20 years. Oh, he'll come back in 1,000 years. I've heard so many different guesses on that. But now we're going to be able to understand that here we are on the tail end of the fourth king, and we know that these events are going to happen while he's in power, and we know this is what's going to happen after he's in power. And so this is exciting. This is a game changer for us as Christians. As Christians, you look at the 2012 election. The Christians are divided. And then you go around and you ask Christian, where are we in the prophetic events? We're clueless. In general, we are clueless. And this is an opportunity now that we're going to be able to learn where we are in the prophetic events, and we're going to become more united in where we are in the prophetic events. We're probably not going to become any more united in all the unity of the doctrine right now. But we are going to be able to become more united in where we are right now. And with that, we're going to be able to prepare better. We're going to be able to get better candidates. So we'll be able to talk to the politicians in power and encourage them to vote and make laws and do things that would make our country more Christian grounded, more with less regulations, and the opportunity for our nation to grow in the economy, and that's what we need. We need to become more energy self-sufficient, more food self-sufficient, and more economically self-sufficient. We need our economy to grow and to grow strong. So, all right, I've said enough for this segment right now, and I hope that you will take the time, go to godinourfuture.com. godinourfuture.com. Look over the information there. We have some short videos over there. I have a video called God in Our Future. It's part 1. It's about an hour and 40 minutes long. It goes over 3 chapters out of the book of Revelation, 3 chapters out of the book of Daniel, and shows how both John and Daniel saw the same succession of 8 kings. So take that opportunity, look over the information, pray about it. And then, you know what? Once you know about it, we got to work together to share this information with others. This is the time. This is a time that Christians are now going to be able to understand where we are in the prophetic events, and we're going to be able to move this country in a more positive direction. And that positive direction, when it comes to the mark of the beast time, sometime during the reign of the sixth king, our nation is going to be a very strong Christian nation, isn't it? Because it's going to be the Christians that are going to be wanting to stay here. It's going to be the Christians that aren't going to be wanting to have the mark of the beast system. And that mark of the beast system, I look at it in the scriptures, and it seems like it's going to be a very economically strong type of a system, where it just talks about living deliciously, and it just seems like, yeah, it's going to be appealing to many people. But here in the United States, we're going to love God more. We're going to love Christ more, and we're going to want to be united, and we're going to want to love and serve God. All right. Take a look at GodInOurFuture.com. Take a look at that information, and then I need your support. We need each other's support to keep USA great. Be sure to sign up for the free newsletter, and there's not a whole lot to it right now, but that's how you can show your support, by getting on that newsletter and saying, hey, I'm interested in this. I want to learn more. All right. Thanks a lot. God bless you. Have a great day.